Welcome to our EarSketch panel, where this might be the first time that we have all of our Seismic and Georgia Tech staff in one virtual room describing all of our EarSketch projects. In an earlier session where we presented one of our projects, I mentioned to Sabalu, who is our moderator today, he was one of our initial EarSketch teachers when we just had like one project and one grant. And now I kind of just said, EarSketch has blown up. And so we were so excited that we could present it in multiple ways, and hopefully you can apply it to whatever CS classroom that you are interested in using EarSketch in. So make these learn code promote equity. EarSketch giving students a voice in the CS classroom. And we have our four amazing panelists who are leading and directing a lot of these EarSketch curriculum initiatives. And I'll let them introduce themselves. So starting with Shalise, and then we can go to Dr. DeLay Hernandez, Dr. Roxanne Moore, and Doug Edwards.
Hello and good afternoon. I am Shalise DeLacadre. I'm a music technologist by trade, so it is my job to see where the intersection between music and computer science, see where that lives and see how that can expand. And I use my background as an audio engineer and my present as a computer scientist to create learning experiences for students that kind of mirror some of those real world music industry experiences.
Hi, everybody. I'm DeLay Hernandez. I'm a senior research scientist with Seismic. And my background is in educational psychology, specifically the study of education and cultural studies in education. I have been working in the topic of how to make STEM fields more welcoming for underrepresented students for more than 10 years now. And I serve as the director of the Capacity NSF grant, and I'm also the principal investigator for the Remezcla project, which we're going to be talking about today. Thank you for coming and talking to us.
Hi, I'm Dr. Roxanne Moore. I am a mechanical engineer, and I am a senior research engineer at Seismic and also in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I was on an early-ish EarSketch grant several years ago with Doug and some others here. And now I lead our partnership with Amazon, and specifically the Your Voice is Power competition that we'll be discussing later in this panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Edwards. I am a former electrical engineer, senior research associate at Seismic, and have been co-PI on the earlier EarSketch grant with Roxanne, co-PI on Capacity with DeLay, and current co-PI for Remezcla with DeLay, with the PI. And so I'll be sharing some of the curriculum we have developed that uses EarSketch in the capacity grant that we did later on.
Sabrina, you're muted.
There we go. Thank you to our panelists. And we're going to hear from each panelist in a few minutes as they describe kind of their curricular projects that implement EarSketch in the classroom. Just a quick overview for those who might be new to EarSketch and understanding why we took this approach of looking at EarSketch, which is a code to compose program, and why we were looking at this intersection of coding and music. So looking at coding and music and why we are incorporating both of these, music and computing have very similar computational constructs, both very based on math, a set of instructions, time-based. And so as you are going to see through our EarSketch curriculums, you might see that there's a lot of very great similarities between how a student might learn how to code and how a student might learn how to write music. We really wanted an authentic application of programming, something that students can produce a product of, and then something that also built on their interests and passions. Students are naturally engaged with music, and they like music. They don't see it as something that is out of their realm. And so bringing music into the CS classroom allows us to really expand the audiences and the student populations that we can reach in CS, and also makes it something that they can see moving forward in their lives. So they can take their interests and their passions and combine it with learning how to code and program. So EarSketch built on this. It utilizes the power of music to engage diverse student populations in computing education. Throughout our several curriculum and research projects that we've had, I believe, over the last 9 years, we've seen increases in attention to persist in computing, especially among women and underrepresented minorities. And one thing that we also like about EarSketch in its authenticity is that it gives us the opportunity to develop curriculum incorporating project-based learning and voice and choice, which is what leads us to our 3 curricular projects, is that by giving an applicable, authentic environment using EarSketch and coding, we're able to really build on that and take student experiences and allow them to see how CS fits into their lives. So a quick introduction history of EarSketch. As we said, it's a code to compose program. Right now, students have the opportunity to remix samples using Python or JavaScript. And they also have opportunities to use block coding. So if you've used Scratch before, EarSketch does have that ability too, both in Python and JavaScript. We have over 4,000 sounds in our library, in our sound browser, from artists such as Pharrell, from Common, from Sierra, from Young Guru, who is Jay-Z's sounds engineer. And as you'll learn today, we are also incorporating more Latinx artists into our sound library. It is a multi-track digital audio workstation. So if your students have used GarageBand or Pro Tools before, they might recognize the workstation. It also gives students experience of what an audio engineer might be doing as an actual job. So students who might be interested in going into the recording industry would actually get experience using EarSketch. It is a collaborative tool. Students can collaborate, not even being in the same classroom. It's an online collaboration. And the idea is that we want computer science or programming to become collaborative. Just like artists might collaborate to create a remix or a song together, students should be collaborating doing code. It's not just something that a student would do on their own and just with their computer. Students can download and share their remix. We have lots of students who might share it on SoundCloud or YouTube. They can download it on their phone as a ringtone. So they can actually create music and share it with their friends. So it becomes a social environment and giving those experiences within the computer science classroom. It is free, as is our curriculum. It is web-based. There's no software downloads. Students do not have to enter any identifiable information. And it runs in Chrome, Safari, and Firefox. So we included a video in here, which you can watch on your own, but this actually was filmed at a local Fulton County high school, and it's student to student, all about EarSketch. So we definitely encourage you to watch the videos. So on this note, as we mentioned, that EarSketch lent itself to the ability to develop curriculum around this tool, I'd like to have our panelists share the 3 different kind of curriculums that overviews, and then we will talk about different connections and how they can be used in your classrooms. So we can start with Your Voice is Power.
Ooh, there it is. All right. The Your Voice is Power curriculum project initially seeks to answer the larger question of how music, computer science, and entrepreneurship can all become pathways to promote racial equity. This particular project this year centers around the song Entrepreneur by Pharrell Williams featuring Jay-Z, because because of the message of the song, it really embodies kind of like a love and support letter to entrepreneurship, and particularly Black men who seek out entrepreneurship. And we use this as an avenue to be a catalyst and facilitate discussion about entrepreneurship and racial equity through this creative lens of music, composition, and coding. It's a curriculum experience, but it's also a competition. We encourage students to be clear about their intentions and share their voice throughout this project, for the opportunity to win $5,000 in either scholarship or funds to start their own business. So we kind of put our money where our mouth was on this one and say, we're going to promote entrepreneurship. We're going to promote greater presence in computer science education. And we're also going to give some resource to support that advancement as well. So it is a competition. Students remix stems from Pharrell's Entrepreneur while learning to manipulate and code those sounds in EarSketch. Note, experience is necessary for students to participate. It assumes that participants are starting from ground zero and have no previous experience. So it starts at a very accessible position. The experience helps to develop a deeper understanding of messaging and intentionality in music and composition, social justice themes, and encompassing all of these things while meeting a set of coding requirements. This is also an opportunity for students to be able to see coding and computer science as a creative field, as a way to be expressive and to share idea and to share perspective through coding and computer science. So it kind of seeks to take some of that cold calculation that can be perceived from coding and computer science and really pushes the idea that you can be expressive and creative while you're doing this technical thing of coding. As I said, students compete with a predefined set of submission requirements. We require that students submit a song between 30 seconds and 3 minutes long, and include 5 unique tracks include 5 unique different soundtracks, one of which has to be from Pharrell's Entrepreneur set. We also require students to submit a reflection with their song to explain their intentions, to explain their compositional choices, and really make clear to us their message in promoting equity. And students were allowed to submit 1 song per round. We had 2 rounds, so students were allowed to submit 1 song per round. And the submissions are judged on music content, on their messaging content, and their coding content by a panel of judges. So even if students feel like they're not the strongest composers or the strongest coders, they might have an incredible message. So it gives students multiple opportunities to be successful in all 3 of those areas. As I also mentioned, 5 students have the opportunity to win $5,000 in scholarships or grants to start a business. And we reward teachers as well as the ones who really introduce this opportunity and are the ones who are engaging their students in this. 5 teachers would receive $1,000 for above and beyond instruction. We just finished our round 2 submissions. And we had 862 unique submissions for round 2. So that's super, super exciting. Our statistics for round 1, we had 667 submissions, unique submissions from round 1, and 510 of those submissions were from first-time EarSketch users. So more than half, well over half of the submissions from round 1 were students who had never used EarSketch before, and 250 of those submissions were from students who'd never coded before. So we're really excited to see this type of engagement for this program. We saw engagement across 21 states, one territory and one province. One of our finalists was actually from Guam, I believe that was. And we also have a fair representation of students across the board between K through 5, middle school, 6th through 8th grade, and 9th through 12th grade students. So there's a wide range of accessibility for this program. The general learning sequence of the program is quite thematic in the way that it progresses through the modules, with module 0 literally being ground zero and assuming that you've never had any kind of experience or introduction to EarSketch before. Module 0 is intended to give you that EarSketch introduction, and then you really start to dig into the meat of the Your Voice is Power program in Module 1, where the theme is messaging. So we cover decoding messaging in music using the Outcast Imagination framework, as well as music messaging and coding, covering print lines and comments. Module 2 covers layering as its theme, where we cover layers of racial injustice, as well as layering as it pertains to music composition. Module 3 thematically is about tempos, particularly setting your own tempo. And that is where we explore themes of entrepreneurship, and students have the opportunity to explore different entrepreneurs' profiles and learn about their journeys. Module 4 is about structure, and that's where we begin to talk about music structurally. We begin to talk about every person's role and how that looks different, but it works toward the same goal of promoting equity. So we look at how those roles differ, and then we wrap up. And we talk about structure in computing as it pertains to custom functions. And then we wrap up our modules with a call to action and a reflection point for where we can move forward after all that we've learned. So that is a brief synopsis of the Your Voice is Power program. And I think at this point, I will kick it off to the capacity team.
I'll add only one point, which is that if you're now kicking yourself saying, darn it, I missed the submission windows for these Your Voice is Power competitions, we are planning to run this again in fall and probably spring of next year. So you haven't missed out, just hang tight.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started introducing a little bit our capacity project. So capacity is part of an STEMC NSF grant. The principal investigator for the project is Dr. Marion Hasselman at Seismic, and the co-PIs are Doug Edwards, who's here in our panel today, and also Dr. Meltem Alendar, also from Seismic. The goals of the program, I don't know, for those of you who have been for some time working in schools and they're familiar with the curriculum of computer science, especially at the high school level, you know that one of the primary courses that students actually enroll in when they want to take later computer science pathway courses is that introduction to digital technology course. And one of the issues that we wanted to really address with the capacity program is especially tackle that lack of representation of underrepresented students and girls in those courses. If you can move to the next slide, that'd be great. Okay, great. I mean, we usually know that when you look at computer science classes, especially those higher level courses, they are not precisely courses that where you see a lot of girls and underrepresented minorities. So, but the way to actually build a pipeline into those higher level courses is to start working with students early on and show them how computer science can be something that can be relevant, important, and meaningful to them. So the primary goal of the capacity program was actually to take this course and redesign it in a way that was using best practices for project-based learning, inquiry learning, and culturally authentic practices in order to really open this view for students of what computer science could be, and hopefully encourage students to consider taking more higher level courses in the fields. So what is the capacity program? So as part of capacity, we initially started with a completely redesign of the IDT course. And we're talking about a whole 1 year classroom course with a lot of scaffolding for teachers and resources and curriculum materials for students for a whole 1 year of instruction. So that redesign of the IDT course follow 4 primary subcomponents. The first one, of course, we wanted to have a focus on computational thinking and make sure that the course was introducing students to a lot of the really important basic concepts that they needed, but that also led them quicker into more rigorous content that it was related to computational thinking practices and programming. Something that it is unique about our project too was that sort of like the combination between this computational thinking sort of strategies and concepts, and also certain next generation cross-cutting concepts like structure, function, and patterns. So all this focusing of content knowledge within the capacity program happens within a project-based learning arch in which students are encouraged to find a problem that is meaningful to them. And this problem can be meaningful to them at a personal level, at a social level, or a community level, or a cultural level. What we see is that students bring themselves in ways that sort of like involve many of these dimensions. And I will show you and talk a little bit more about some of these examples, maybe today, but definitely tomorrow if you come to a presentation about capacity. And so the students are encouraged to actually think about this big problem that matters to them, and then think about how computer science and creating digital artifacts through coding can help them address, learn about this problem, engage others in their community or the schools in their understanding of this program, sort of like creating awareness about it, but also sort of like trying to design solutions that could be effective in order to address this social, personal, or cultural problems. So students really are given sort of like, they're learning computer science in the context of engaging meaningfully with something that matters to them. And I think this is really important, because this is how we can really make sure that students are engaged in ways that are authentic, in ways that they are relevant. Which is where the culturally authentic practices came in. And we mean what we mean by that, by culturally authentic practices, is that practices that are embedded throughout the curriculum and that they work in tandem with a project-based learning strategy. So you don't have a toolkit, or you don't have something hidden that you had to do here and there, but these are practices that are all throughout the capacity curriculum, and that they're designed to help students to, first of all, promote their asset-based thinking and their sense of belongingness. When students are thinking about their problems, and we can acknowledge that the classroom is a place where everybody can be themselves and all problems have value, and things that really matter to students can be addressed in the context of a computer science classroom. We are really telling students there are multiple ways to think about this, and the traditions, the historical context, and the things that are really valuable to you also have a space in this place and in your education and in your growth, because you already have those strengths. So we build on the strengths and the knowledge that already students are bringing into the classroom. By helping them use computer science and building digital artifacts to solve these problems, we're also helping them build an agency, because we're telling students you can actually make an impact by using these skills and other skills, or the creative skills that you may have, in order to actually solve problems. There's another big component of the curriculum, which is equity building collaborative work. So sometimes this is something that may or may not occur in traditional computer science classrooms, but the capacity program is heavy on collaborative work, and not just collaborative work in which the students are just like, sometimes working in groups, but the group work, it is actually designed using best practices in order to promote diversity and to make sure that all students sort of like have an equal opportunity to experience coding and all the tasks that may be related to computer science. And lastly, what we have done also with the curriculum is that because we know particularly girls and underrepresented minorities are more at risk for negative stereotypes that are associated with their success in particular STEM fields like computer science, we do have a lot of strategies built within the curriculum that help reduce that social identity or stereotype threat that students may experience. There's a lot of opportunity for them to reflect about their learning growth and sort of like map that out, map their progress throughout the course. There's also opportunities to sort of like think and see videos of students who are engaged in computer science that look like them, and that there are young people who have had very recent histories in high school, face their own challenges, but have been able to sort of be successful within the computer science fields. So we are really sort of like working very heavily in trying to provide relatable role models for students that they can sort of like connect with, and that they can, this connection with these role models that you're watching these videos and reflecting upon it can actually help them think a little bit about their own opportunities and their own paths in computer science. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it now to my colleague, Doug Edwards, who's going to give us a little bit more details about the capacity curriculum.
There we are. For the Introduction to Digital Technology course, there are 4 units. The third unit uses EarSketch, and in that unit, students are actually developing music that they will put on a video or website for background to elicit a mood related to the topic that Delay talked about earlier that they feel is relevant to them. If you go to the next slide. Next slide, please. There we are. And as an example of these topics, you can see 3 of them right here that students chose of car accidents, anxiety and stress, ocean and marine pollution. There are many, many topics they have chosen, from bullying to families being separated at the border, to police brutality, to, oh my goodness, war and depression, college debt. And so as an example of their music, you can see block code that they use to make their music in EarSketch. As you can see, the focus here was iteration. And if you come to our session tomorrow, we'll actually share the music. In the interest of time, I'm going to move forward to the next slide. And so for middle school, if you'll go to the next slide, there are also 4 units in the middle school, Foundations of Computer Programming. The second unit uses EarSketch, which is the Intro to Programming unit. Once again, students in middle school in this case are using music to elicit a mood, and they're going to actually use that music for a quiz game app as back for that quiz game related to a topic of choice. And if you'll go to the next slide. And for our high school AP Computer Science Principles, the entire second semester uses EarSketch. The first unit in the second semester, which is Unit 6, has a challenge where they develop music for their school. In Unit 7, they develop music for a school partner. In Unit 8, for a topic of their choice. And in Unit 9, they actually create a jukebox using EarSketch, where they have to apply musical form, and in so doing, have to apply custom functions. They actually record a musical transition, and then they computationally adjust that transition using an analyze track for time function to bring the volume in alignment with the volume of the rest of their music. And they also, as a part of that, choose a song in the jukebox or have the computer actually randomly choose the song for them. And if you want to see how to access the curriculum and capacity totally for free, be it middle school or high school, then join us at 12:20 for our session tomorrow. Delay, you're up.
Yeah, so I also wanted to briefly present to you about our, I think probably our newest NSF grant, which we call Remezcla, but the official title is Collaborative Research Broadening Participation of Latinx Students in Computer Science by Integrating Culturally Relevant Computational Music Practices. Remezcla is so much shorter. So this project is an ASO NSF project. We are in our first year, so we just got funded last July. And it is a collaborative project between the Georgia Tech and the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. You can actually read on the screen the names of our principal investigators and co-principal investigators in both our sites. But we work closely together. Actually, one of the main goals of our project is to build sort of like a strong partnership between the two sites and being able to bring this broadening participation in computer science to Latino students in both Atlanta and Puerto Rico. And the goals of the Remezcla project, perfect. Are really, especially when it comes to EarSketch, it was to redesign the platform so it could be more linguistically and more culturally relevant to Latino students. Something that we had noticed within EarSketch is that there was not a lot of, for example, music beats or rhythms or like even sometimes instruments that would lend themselves very easily to make Latin music, particularly both sort of like traditionally or modern current styles of music. So something that we wanted to do in EarSketch in order to make it more inclusive and more welcoming to Latino students was to add music beats, sounds, and instruments to the database that could be more friendly to Latino students if they wanted to create music that had a more of a Latin flavor, or even remix in new ways a lot of like the music that was already existing in EarSketch. And right now we have already started adding a lot of like beats and sounds that are already available within EarSketch. And we have had the contributions of two artists in Puerto Rico, Irizarry and Caraballo, and then also Milk and Sis, which are a Grammy Award winner producer and musician duo that is based here in Atlanta. And they have been creating throughout this year sort of like this new database of music sounds. And this is just the beginning. So we're going to actually continue to develop more sounds and expand our database. So it covers a wide range of sort of like traditional, like I said, traditional and contemporary music sounds that are related to Latino culture. So that was one of the big sort of like changes and goals that we have with the Remezcla project. The other one was to take EarSketch and make it language fluid for Spanish speakers. So provide an opportunity within the platform so that those who speak Spanish could have sort of like this toggle bottom and change the content that was there in the platform, both in terms of sort of like the coding and structure and this, the different sections and the ability to sort of like read instructions within the platform, but also sort of like the main curriculum that was there. And we also wanted it to make it pretty fluid, so it would be reflective of really how bilingual students within the US actually speak and how they actually work, which is that sometimes they may not understand something in English and switch back to Spanish, or they may be working in Spanish and then they may just kind of like wanted to continue switching back from English and Spanish. So we wanted the platform to sort of like reflect this very authentic way of language use. the Latinx students really have, particularly within the continental US. And these two main changes to EarSketch, there's something that is pretty much in sync with the culturally sustaining pedagogy focus, which is some literature that we have from Paris and Latson Billings in her later works, that really sort of focuses on how we can think about how we teach with a focus on language and literacy in ways of being and learning. How can we really actually encourage the students to learn, but support them in sustaining their cultural and linguistic competences? So we really wanted to create something that Latino students could feel that was reflective of them if they wanted to engage with the platform in an authentic way. The other piece to the Remezcla curriculum, it is actually the development of informal curriculum for middle school and high school students. So we are also developing, 1 week summer camps and an after-school program for Latinx students that is really going to be focused on students' exploration of their cultures, their communities, and their lived experiences. So we wanted to have something that, again, a way of engaging with EarSketch that really, really reflected and capitalizes on their stories and their traditions and, their relationships and the beauty that is within their culture. And our hope is that it's going to help us understand a little bit more an area of the literature within computer science that is still sort of like underexplored, which is how much we can actually understand what is the impact of this cultural congruity and belonging and intentions to persist in computer science, and and sort of like get a little bit of a more nuanced views of the cultural differences in engagement. Because we know that, sometimes we're thinking about groups in ways that are sometimes just from one category of people, but if we actually think about intersectionality, we know that it's like people are more complex than that. People, different groups and ways of being, they're a little bit more complex than that. So how does that complexity actually impact the way that we engage with things like computer science? And what does a curriculum that is really very open and expanded and that allows people to bring themselves in these ways that are very authentic, what can that afford to really in terms of engagement, in terms of developing self-efficacy, developing competence, and developing a desire and an identity to pursue these areas in the future. So we're hoping that to learn more about what sort of like these focus adaptations to EarSketch and this curriculum will do, and what is the particular impact of this cultural engagement factors in computer science outcomes that we really wish we would have for all students.
Thank you so much to Delay and Doug and Roxanne and Shalise for giving us such an amazing overview of these changes to EarSketch, of these curriculums, of these opportunities to really broaden participation in computer science through using Remezcla, Your Voice is Power, and the capacity curriculum. I'm going to take down, stop sharing the screen now, and I'd love for our panelists just to discuss some possible connections between these curriculums and how possibly even combining or using parts of these could really help to bring in more students to our CS classrooms and make EarSketch more accessible to all.
Sure, I could start. I think there's a lot of great stuff, right? Hopefully you are starting to see that there may be an avenue for you within the EarSketch ecosystem that will resonate with you and your students that you work with. And, as we all work together, we're also thinking about creating more synergies more intentionally. So for example, in 2022, we anticipate a new curriculum and competition that focuses specifically on Latinx artists. So it's not explicitly part of Remezcla, but will hopefully be synergistic with Remezcla, right? And so with Your Voice is Power, it's a 1 week experience. And so if you did capacity, you would have enough EarSketch knowledge to do an add-on of Your Voice is Power at the end of the year, or, however you'd like to do it. So hopefully you're seeing timelines and themes and cultures that, something works for you and something works for your students.
I'll add that we've seen where students who are using capacity in the class, actually sometimes their final project or one of their projects is to actually submit to your competitions, the Amazon competitions. So be it Your Voice is Power or whichever one was running at the time. So that synergy definitely exists.
Yeah, and I think the expansion of EarSketch of both the music database, but also sort of like this opportunities to be more language and linguistically inclusive, it actually does a lot when we think about bilingual students or English language learner students who may have some time, who may struggle when they come in, especially if they're on their own trying to figure out a lot of the curriculum. And this request of making, EarSketch have some resources in Spanish is something that we had already heard in the schools when we were implementing the capacity curriculum, which that's a lot of students who could really use resources that they are in both languages. So in many ways, having this sort of like more linguistic expansion in EarSketch and the available curriculum for both teachers and students, it helps a lot of students already within the US and Puerto Rico. And eventually, if we think in a global way, all Latin America.
I guess I can round out with the connections that Your Voice is Power really kind of brings in that element of intentional creation. Like a lot of times in CS education, you can kind of miss the feeling that computing and coding is a creative and an expressive practice. And the thing that I really like about Your Voice is Power is that it really emphasizes being clear about your intentions and being able to communicate that creativity while engaging in a technical activity. So with a program like Capacity that focuses on a particular problem that affects a student in their space, I think that Your Voice is Power can support that by having the student really be clear about the music that they create and the message that they're trying to convey, as well as with Remezcla having students be able to clearly convey and communicate their messaging through their music in ways that other students who don't share their background may not be able to understand. So being able to be really clear and communicative about that creative practice, I think is something that this new direction of EarSketch material is kind of pushing us toward that.
Thank you so much. And I know you touched on this in these answers, but what do you think is next in each one of your projects? And just as we continue to move forward and expand EarSketch, what do you see in the future for our teachers who are looking to implement EarSketch in the next year or two?
Tag, I'll go for it. I'll say I think that EarSketch is headed in a very exciting and inclusive direction. I feel like that we're in a space where we have so many perspectives that are now beginning to chime in on this project, that we are in a space where we can see where we started, we can see the intention of why we started, and then we can expand that to people that we may not have thought about when we did start. We're at a space where we're including our Latinx brothers and sisters. We're at a space where we could potentially begin to include our Asian American brothers and sisters, at a place where we could potentially include our differently abled brothers and sisters in code. So I believe that we're getting to this place where we're thinking very inclusively, and now we're building a platform that matches the thought process behind it.
Yeah, that's great. Those are great points, Shalise. And I'll add that, we're constantly scouting new artists in partnership with Amazon, which gives us a lot more reach, shall we say, in terms of recruiting new artists. And so I think you'll continue to see new STEMs, diverse genres, and more curriculum opportunities that play on these different themes that you can touch on in music. And so, I think it makes it a really exciting time to engage with the platform. We also continue to support our early users. So if you've used EarSketch in the past year, if you weren't logged in, you may have noticed we implemented a pop-up bubble tutorial to kind of walk a new user through EarSketch. So one of the things we're discussing right now is, can we enhance that experience? How do we continue to build a great experience for first-time coders and build confidence so students feel like they can create a meaningful script right out of the gate? They almost always have fun right out of the gate, but we're also trying to think about those computational skills.
Doug, I don't know if you want to mention something about capacity in terms of the curriculum or...
I'll start, you can finish, because we can both talk about this forever. So, in terms of students who have completed the EarSketch curriculum, our research has shown that students are significantly more engaged in comparison to the traditional CS classroom, and their intention to persist in computing is also higher, as well as their computational thinking skills are also significantly increased, as well as their cognitive engagement significantly more increased. So all those things come together into this intention to persist in computing beyond that 9th or 10th grade course. But even we had 12th graders who did not take any computer science courses and were placed as an elective in IDT because they didn't have, that's where they had space in their schedule. And those students also ended up saying, oh, this computer science stuff ain't that bad. I think I'll actually try this out in college maybe. So, they didn't say it like that, but it's me, right? So, examples, research examples, anecdotal examples, both quantitatively and qualitatively in respect to students getting inspired and just feeling the fire of creativity and wanting to continue that in computer science.
And something that I think we have also been working, and so it's like this is a long conversation that is almost being 5 years between Doug and me at least, is how can we really create this environments in which we are designing is intentional. First of all, it's expansive enough that people can authentically engage from very diverse groups, from students who are like racially diverse in terms of gender, diverse in terms of culture, diverse in terms of country of procedence, diverse in terms of language, how we can have curriculum and sort of like environments that can be engaging authentically to really diverse students, because that's how our classrooms really look like. Most of the times you have students who are coming from this very different sort of like ways of life. So how do we capitalize on things that we know pedagogically work? Like, how do we make students feel autonomous and ownership of their learning? How do we make them feel that they can build competence and engage and get excited about their learning and that they can be successful? How do we make them displaced places where they can experience sense of belongingness, where they don't feel alienated? And at the same time that we're looking at very broad things that we know could work for a lot of diverse students, which is sort of like overall inclusive and engagement, what do we do that is specific and intentional and needed for those who are underrepresented and underserved in those spaces? What can we do that is really sort of creating that unique intervention, that unique sort of like set of conditions that really has the students feel that this is really something that I could do. This is really somewhere I belong. Because we know that general sort of like sometimes pedagogical things, they don't work the same for everybody. So how can we capture both things that we know could be effective and they're best practices, and we bring them into computer science instruction and computer science programs. But how do we build intentional work that can really support the development and the thriving of the underrepresented minorities who may feel that computer science is a place where that is not built for them? How we can build that space for them? So how do we look at that nuance and we help build our understanding of what really works for students, which is, especially as computer science becomes, you know, the new literacy, we need to address. We need to address how we change the way that we think about computer science and the conditions in which our students work in computer science, so we can really make it relevant, authentic, and we can promote the success of all students within the area.
Yeah, that's a really great point to lay into that. And, you know, one of the things that I think you'll also see in the next year is we're being more intentional about international partnerships, right? You can see that with, I mean, obviously Puerto Rico is part of the US, but looking beyond what do just US students need. And so one of our partnerships is actually with Canada. And so they are working with some Indigenous artists up there and recording sounds coming from Indigenous Canadian tribes that, you know, we're looking at adding into EarSketch, and they're augmenting your voice's power and doing some other things with that curriculum to make it more specific to their population. So I think you're going to continue to see more things like that. You know, our near-term focus in terms of next competition, next artist is Latinx, but we also have these other things going on that I think you'll see more of in the future. And that's exciting, right? Because we are a global community of computer scientists.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing in the past couple of years how much we have really expanded EarSketch and made it a more inclusive platform and taken some of the initial goals in its development and really put them into action. And I think the amount of students, the reach has been incredible. I think we've hit over 100,000 users already this year. And we've just seen more and more students engaging in EarSketch, but that means more and more students are engaging in computer science and coding, which is overall what we want to happen. We have, I believe, about 4 minutes left. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to ask any more questions, and feel free, I guess, to also jump on screen. You can you can ask questions in person, whether you're more comfortable in the chat or on screen. And I did see we have a question from Don Carter. How do you decide what kinds of music to add next? There are so many options.
That's a great question, Don. Sometimes we can't fully control it. So when EarSketch started, the original library was all commissioned. So the original EarSketch team had connections with Young Guru and with Richard Devine, and we bought those samples. A lot of the new samples that you're seeing coming in, like Milk and Sizz were commissioned, I believe, but like Pharrell, we had to get him to agree to give us those stems. And it's actually not that simple because artists don't really own their own music. So a lot of people have to agree to share those stems. So unfortunately, we don't have total control. It's not something we can cherry pick. It has to be of mutual benefit or commissioned. So we're doing all of the above, and we're constantly pursuing new leads. My contact at Amazon is working with Amazon Music. So they are trying to help look for new artists, but it's, you know, it's not as simple as just like calling Beyonce and being like, hey, give us your song. Because even if she wants to, she can't necessarily do that. So it's actually a really interesting process.
I mean, right now in Remezcla, where we had the opportunity to make some selection and commission, for example, some specific Latin sounds, we are sort of like almost following sort of like a two-tack process. We did commissions of music, and a lot of what Milk and Sizz, you know, have been producing is very sort of like urban Latin music, which is very contemporary. It is already pretty much within Remix, but but it still sort of like really has a flavor that is very, very Latino, still in itself. With some of the music that we have gotten right now from Puerto Rico, they have a lot of sort of like jazz and salsa and so on. So sort of like kind of like traditional things, but they are still sort of like have roots in the Caribbean. So we expect that a lot of like our next batch is probably going to be looking at how we can do more sort of like Central America, Mexico, and maybe some sort of like South American sort of like flavor sounds that could be more related to things like cumbia, to things like, more Chicano traditional music, maybe banda, maybe so things that also would speak to students sort of like on the Western region of the United States that come a lot kind of like from the Mexican American tradition. And at the same time, so we're asking students, so we're sort of like trying to think inclusively, but obviously we cannot be, sort of like completely inclusive. So our other sort of like second tack is to our students, like, what type of music do you like to listen to? If you were to have music in EarSketch, what type of music do you want? And we ask Latinx students, and here's the thing: students listen to everything, right? Students listen to rock, they listen to hip hop, they listen to dubstep, they listen to pop and K-pop too. So this K-pop, and that's like number one request that we were getting. That it was like, how didn't we think about that? So we can think expansively, but the truth is that students are already in spaces and bringing themselves authentically, being really sort of like. If we are going to honor sort of like the way where students are, that is a place that is already diverse, and it's a place where it's already is sort of like pretty much mixed with the music. So we can sort of like provide for them a lot of building blocks with the expectations that they will get played with, and that in pretty much unique ways. And so we are sort of like doing both. We're trying to make sure that if somebody really is interested in something sort of that at least come from very broad regions, it is there. There's that possibility for taking that in, but also sort of trying to include, things that are very contemporary that students are really, really interested in. Because students, they are all kind of like sort of part of this very broad culture within the United States, where we are all, kind of like having a lot of cultural exchange, so sort of like we're many, many more students. So then again, I think that goes back to the question, something broad that students can sort of like tag along, that can be responsive to their personal interest, but nuanced and intentional, so that if they wanted to do something that is really culturally rooted, they have the opportunity to do that. So how do we provide both things? As long as you sort of like have sort of a canvas that has everything in it, I think, or at least most things in it, from all these different places, that's just beautiful. I think my perspective is that the more we can aim towards that, the more creative students will be able to be.
And then we run into the interesting problem of helping students find sounds that go together across all these different genres, right? Because just because you have them in the library doesn't necessarily mean they sound good together. So one of EarSketch's tricks is organizing things in such a way and helping students navigate to sounds that will naturally sound good together. But the more the library gets diversified, the harder that is to actually do.
Yeah.
I know our time is almost up. Do we have any more questions, last questions, before we say a huge thank you to our panelists? Or any last comments from our panelists? Or not?
Anybody in the audience? I know Sababu's used EarSketch, but are there others who have or haven't used EarSketch in our audience? Want to say anything about it?
More on EarSketch tomorrow.
I guess I will say one more thing to kind of tag on to what Roxanne said about the expansion of EarSketch and it becoming more difficult to find things that go together. I think that also presents us with a super exciting opportunity to include our music teachers in some of these experiences in the coding classrooms, because that music education, that music theory education is going to be the thing that helps students understand what sounds good together, what goes together, and why those things do work. So regardless of what culture or what background your sound clips are coming from, all of these things can still be tied together with music theory. So super exciting prospect there to include creative and music theory and technology into your coding classrooms.
It's a great point.
Yes, I think over the past year or two, we've had a lot more music teachers involve themselves in EarSketch, and they're even excited because now they're bringing coding and CS into their classrooms, and moving, and some of their students are really excited about it, and they're supporting the technology engineering teachers at their schools. And it's been awesome to see the confidence that the music teachers have when they actually code their first song. So it's been a great transition.
Stay tuned for winners from the Your Voice is Power competition. They'll probably be announced end of August. So the round 1 winners are already up. So if you want to see examples of things students created, we haven't released their code yet since the competition's still active, but certainly by about August, we'll release their code as well. So you can get some examples of student work and their messaging and how these things kind of come together. Yes, Sabrina put in the link, our teacher site for EarSketch. So yeah, I hope you'll check it out.
And I also wanted just to give you all a reminder, if you want to learn more about our capacity program and the different curricula that we have developed for capacity, please join us in our session tomorrow, which is going to be, I believe, at 12:15. So just stop by and we'll talk to you some more about EarSketch and other things that we do within capacity.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and engaging with the EarSketch team as part of this conference. Thank you so much to the Constellations PD Summit for having us and allowing us to share the multiple curriculum experience with EarSketch. And hopefully we'll engage some of your students in one of these curriculum projects.
Thanks for moderating, Sabrina.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Sabalu, for
Yes, thank you.
And always being so supportive of EarSketch too. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
It's great to see all of you.
I know.
I thought it was fun to like hear all these connections, like everybody in one place. I loved it.
Nice.
Enjoy it now. This probably won't happen again for some time.
So we're all always running at a full sprint.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, I need to go.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Jen.
Great to see you all.
Great to see you all. Bye.
All right.
Bye.